Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Hello, Josh. Now, this is a couple of days old, but I think it's worth talking about. It seems that during the Xbox Game Showcase, 343 then came out after we all saw Halo Infinite, and the game wasn't even running on the Xbox Series X. Now, I haven't seen that many people talk about this, other than in the initial fallout, a couple of different tweets and whatever, but it's worth delving into because other companies do this stuff as well. And I think it's worth sort of talking about that general idea of, should something that's very much advertised as an Xbox Game Showcase then be able to quote-unquote get away with showing you PC footage instead as a target render of what the Xbox is eventually going to try and get to. So the quote that proves this or whatever comes from 343 themselves, who were talking after Halo Infinite was shown, and they said the game was captured from a PC that is representative of the experience that players will have on Xbox Series X, which is still doubly weird because pretty much everybody's been quite disappointed by the way that game looked. So if that's representative of what it's going to look like in the future, that's not very good.
No, it's a kind of a double-edged sword here, I think. Like, on the one hand, I don't think it's entirely out the ordinary for next-gen games to be running on PC. Like, if you go back to 2013, E3 2013, when we had the first kind of proper look at what the next-gen games then were going to look like. There was a big controversy about how all the Xbox One games and most of the PlayStation 4 games, most of the Xbox One games and most of the PlayStation 4 games were running on PC and not the dev kits or the actual consoles that they were supposedly showing off. And it was a big thing, but that's just kind of like standard practice for next-gen stuff. That said, it is very strange to me, like you said, to kind of come out and show off, a major Xbox game like this and then have it look so weird, even if it is running on PC. Like, you imagine this is PC kind of like higher end stuff, reflective of what next gen consoles can kind of show off, and it didn't look amazing, at least from a graphical perspective. I remember like watching it and thinking it looked quite nice. Like, I thought the facial animation of the guy that Chief was with was quite cool, and obviously the big fella at the end. But overall, I just thought it didn't look like a proper next-gen kind of like step in terms of animation or lighting or the detail in the world. And I wonder whether that's kind of an intentional thing, because this is a game that's going to launch on the Xbox One alongside the X and PC. So this is why I'm conflicted, because I don't think it looked amazing, but then again, this is part of their initiative that they want everything to work across the board on Xbox One, on Xbox Series X, on Xbox, on PC, so it doesn't kind of completely come out of left field that it was running on a PC, because that's still part of, the family they're talking about.
Ecosystem. Well, my thing is it's just clarity. I just think that when I first saw it happen, I was like, oh, that's weird, because like I said, it's literally called the Xbox Game Showcase. This is the big game that you're hanging the Xbox Series X on. And having talked to quite a lot of people since seeing that conference and talking about the differences between, are you excited for PS5 or Xbox Series X, across a whole bunch of different age groups, pretty much nobody is excited for the Series X. It's very easy to sort of hang that on the lack of exclusives or whatever. But something like Halo is meant to be the thing that's getting you in, the big shiny example of why this console matters. And one, to have it running on PC it sticks out. And two, like you said, it didn't necessarily look that great in the first place. I thought a lot of the textures were pretty lacking. Digital Foundry have since done a breakdown of why that is. Apparently, it's related to the lighting engine that's used and different parts of the environment that get showcased or get highlighted. That can make things look a lot flatter if you're hanging around in shadowed areas and stuff like that. Still not a great section to show if that's the case, or not a great lighting model to use if that's the case. But since the game showcase, there have been sort of various rumors going around. One was about the multiplayer not being ready for launch, which has since been debunked. But another was that the build that they showed was an old alpha build of Halo from like a good few months ago, and that's why it was still running on PC. That the actual Series X version is coming along a lot better. But it just screams, if you have the world's attention after the third-party showcase didn't go very well, why the hell did you go with that? Is that the only thing you had? It's just like, for someone who's a lifelong Halo fan, I just want them to do well. Like, I used to love my Xbox 360 and obviously came up on Halo in the first place. So it's just kind of weird. It's a weird beast. Like, do you feel like they were kind of forced into a corner or something? Like, it's a strange way to go.
Judging from what they showed off, it feels like Halo is the only biggie that they have ready for launch. You know what I mean? They need a identifiable brand ready for the next gen system to come out in apparently November. And Gears wasn't going to be ready. Forza is early in development according to them. The new
logo.
Fable got a logo, the new RPG from Obsidian, that's still years away. So all of these other games, they are still years away. So I do think it is a case of all they've really got is Halo. They announced this game 2 years ago now? Like a while ago.
God, a while ago,
to be kind of like the swan song for the Xbox One and kind of like a transition for the Series X. So I wonder how much of the game has kind of been retrofitted to make the use of Series X features without it being like a true Series X title or whatever, like you imagine these other games are going to be. Like, in a lot of ways, it almost feels like the original Last of Us, like a game that came out at the end of a console generation, but that wasn't ready for the PlayStation 4. That just kind of acted as a swan song for the PlayStation 3, whereas this kind of feels like that it could have been a swan song for the Xbox One, but because Microsoft wanted to kickstart the next gen, they might have kind of said, no, we need something. We need Halo. Halo's so big. Halo can shift consoles, and maybe that's why it looks a little bit lacking. And then you've also got to go into the idea that it's open world now, which is a bit more difficult to kind of pull off in terms of fully kind of authoring where the lighting goes and stuff like that.
Yeah, what the player's going to see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Directing what the player's going to see. So I do have a lot of sympathy for it, but like I said in the reaction, I thought it looked solid, but it's not something that made me go, I need to buy an Xbox Series X. I need to buy a high-end PC to play this game.
It's strange because their whole thing is that, because everybody, like I said, I've talked to a lot of people, we sort of keep saying we don't really see the massive reason to buy a Series X, and their answer to that is fine, we don't care, it doesn't matter, we've got this whole family of consoles, we don't really care where you're gaming as long as you're gaming with Xbox. And I think it's worth sort of touching on as well the state of exclusives with them, because mainly a lot of the quotes that came in regards to how they're handling exclusives seem to come from Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, and Aaron Greenberg, the sort of three sort of heads of Xbox, whether it's the marketing department, Phil's the head of Xbox itself. I forget what title Matt Booty has, but they've talked about how whatever you play will play up and down the family of consoles, whether you get it on Xbox One, Series X, or PC. That's sort of Xbox family. That's kind of what they're going for. But even that seems to have kind of been thrown out of whack a little bit by the Xbox Game Showcase, because some trailers had Xbox One logos on, some didn't. Some websites have got the Xbox One logo on and now have been removed. Obsidian's Avowed and Rare's Everwild both had Xbox One logos on their websites, but have now been removed. So it's assumedly they are only Series X exclusives, which is the thing that Phil Spencer said wouldn't be the case, that they wouldn't force you to next gen and everything would work on old Xbox One as well. There is a quote from Aaron Greenberg. This is reported by The Verge. Apparently they got in touch for clarification on, are games going to work on the Xbox One regardless, or is it only on SX? So The Verge apparently got in touch with Xbox and Microsoft, and the reply that they were given was a link to a tweet from Aaron Greenberg. So he says, and this is tweeted, future first-party titles are developed for Xbox Series X first, not saying those games won't ship on Xbox One, only that we are leading with Series X and each studio will decide what's best for their game/community when they launch. That puts all of it on the developer, on the developer side, to choose whether or not they want to put something on the old Xbox One, as opposed to it being an Xbox company mandate. So I still think we're going to have Series X exclusives within that window that Phil said we wouldn't.
Well, I don't know what to believe, Scott, because like you said, the messaging has kind of been all over the place, and it's not really helped by them, like you said, taking off logos from the websites and stuff. But I feel like, when looking at the backlash to this exclusive thing in general, I feel like part of it might be a little bit overblown, because even back when Phil Spencer was saying these things, saying that over the first few years, all the Xbox One, all the Xbox Series X, first party, second party exclusives will play across the family. I'm sure he only said for the first 2 years, and most of the games, by the sounds of it, that we got from this showcase, including Avowed, including even Forza Motorsport, Fable, they're all very early in development. I was surprised when they said that the Forza Motorsport reboot, whatever it is, was early on, because I thought that would be something they either had at launch or next year, but it sounds like these are 2, maybe even 3 years away from launch. There was a rumor that Avowed might not be coming out until 2023 or something. So all those games do fall outside of that 2-year kind of transitionary period that Phil Spencer and everyone else at Xbox
that'll be how they get around it, right? They could just be oh well, everything that we've announced, Phil did say this thing about no Xbox Series X exclusives for a couple of years, so everything we showed isn't going to come for another 2 to 3 years, which therefore makes the game showcase kind of redundant.
Well, you see, yes and no. I feel like I'm defending Microsoft quite a lot in this
No, you should.
video. But I feel like, yeah, that is kind of like the case, and a way for them to get around it, to be like, look, we're making it as consumer friendly as possible at launch, but obviously we're still going to have Xbox Series X exclusives that come a few years after, and this is what we're getting you excited about for now. But I don't think the idea that they are hyping up games that are a few years out is entirely kind of like unheard of, or kind of unethical, or like bad or something. I feel like that's what we always get at a console launch. Like if you look back at the PlayStation 4 announcement, we got announcements for Deep Down, which is yet to be seen. We got announcements for Dreams, which came out 7 years after it was first unveiled. We got teased about Death Stranding for such a long time. Like, I feel like they were between a rock and a hard place. If they didn't show these games and only showed what they had for launch or the first year or so, people would be like, well, where's the games? But now that they're showing these other ones, people are going, well, this isn't going to be playable on the Xbox One. This is not going to be out for a few years. Why are you showing them off now? It's such a difficult way, because they want to get people hyped. But like you said, like it's almost, what's the point if you're not going to be able to play these games for a long time, or if it's going to confuse the messaging you've already put out?
Yeah, I like I said, I bring all of it back to what we sort of talked about at the beginning, that it's just clarity. I think that it's just the weirdest way to roll a system out. Like, yeah, we do get games hyped up years in advance, but you know what system they're coming to, as opposed to, like, right now, there's sort of this general sort of disparity around what's a Series X exclusive, why would you buy the console, are you okay with your Xbox One if you have an Xbox One X or whatever, and they've sort of, like, The Verge they've posted some updates as they're monitoring different websites as logos change or get put up or whatever, but Microsoft haven't really followed up that much on their clarification on smart delivery, or exactly how different games are going to work on different systems. It's just a weird way to roll it out, and things like the Halo build being on PC, just for me, I want a confidence from them. Considering how long we've waited for obviously the next generation of systems, I thought they would come out swinging. Like, I thought the amount of studios that they've bought up, they would have all these really confident new IP announcements, and they'd have some. But it's just, compared to how confident and just hitting the mark the PS5 reveal was, I just want this to be better. It's a strange thing, but
yeah, I feel like I had similar expectations to you. After they bought all those studios, kind of put the right foot forward, should I say, and essentially kickstarted the generation before Sony was ready to even admit they had a console in development. I thought they would have more at this moment to show off. And like I said, in the reaction, what we did see, I was excited for. There are some things that are swaying me towards the Xbox now, but there's nothing to get me in there day one, you know what I mean? Halo looks all right. It looks slightly underwhelming in terms of visuals. As a next-gen spectacle, it doesn't look like that. So I don't think that's going to be for me, but at the same time, like, I keep giving them the benefit of the doubt, man. For years, I keep saying, well, they've got all these cool studios, they've got all this great IP. I just need them to do something with it and kind of prove that, like you said, they have a confident showing. And I wonder whether, they are kind of have this confusing messaging when it comes to the exclusives now. I wonder whether they are reacting to what people are saying in forums and in comments and stuff, because it's not unheard of for a publisher to just change at a whim depending on what the fans, want. You look back to 2013 with its entire system, and it was going down one direction, and everyone said, no, we don't want that, so they completely pivoted. It might not be that extreme, but if they're saying, look, we're not going to have any Xbox Series X exclusives, and everyone says, but we want Xbox Series X exclusives, it's not entirely out of the question that they would, listen to that and then try to pretend like they haven't done a 180 by using this leeway of, well, we always said it was going to be only 2 or 3 years before you got them, and that's still technically correct.
Yeah. Like you said, all that stuff is technically correct. It's just, for me, it's like you've had 7 years to prepare your sort of master plan comeback, and you've been trailing behind the PS5 and even the Switch, for multiple years. Like, I get that this is their game plan. Like, regardless, they don't need you to buy the Series X. Xbox brand works everywhere. It's Netflix for games. Just access the app on your TV, your phone, whatever. I get that's their master plan. But you still, if you're gonna hinge like a new console's release on something, and in this case it's Halo, that thing should look incredible, and you should be pretty clear about how your consumers or your customers are gonna access their library of titles across multiple systems. The answer to why you should buy a Series X still hasn't really come yet, and that's still kind of weird. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below. Where are you sitting on the Series X reveal so far? Are you psyched for the console and the games, or are you kind of just sitting back and waiting to see what the hell happens? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.